Good day, everyone. Eric from Helps here today. Hope you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can hear me clearly. I appreciate that. Always like to hear that. My name's Eric Olsen, attorney with Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay. Our most important message to seniors is that your income is protected. Your Social Security, your pension, your disability, your VA benefits can't be garnished. It's safe for you. Uh, there's even a law that protects it in your bank account. So, and we're here to answer your questions on YouTube Live Monday through Thursday. We do it for an hour. Welcome. You can put your questions in the chat feature. I should be able to answer them. Been an attorney for 46 years, helping seniors and disabled persons with debt issues to solve them so that they don't need to worry. So this person, the topic for today is person sent us a message that said they're worried about credit card debt. Okay. Well, if you're a senior and you're getting Social Security or a pension or disability and you have credit card debt you can't afford to pay, you can choose not to pay that credit card debt. So lawmakers have protected your income. So in the event someone were to sue you and get a garnishment, it can't be taken from you. Okay? And there's even a law that protects it in your bank account. Twice the amount of federal benefits such as Social Security deposited in your checking account is automatically protected from garnishment regardless of what monies are in there or where they came from. So you're going to be fine. You don't need to worry. The whole purpose of Helps is if you have a question or concern, you pick up the phone and you call us, no matter how often. Okay? So Kat asked at the beginning, she says, I'm your client and Discover wants me to call them. Do I just send that letter so you can take care of it? Well, no, you don't need to call. No, and if we haven't notified them, you need to let us know the name and address where you got the letter from, the account number, and we'll send them a cease and desist letter so they leave you alone. Now, once we send that letter, sometimes it may take 2 to 4 weeks for them to get the letter and process it and stop the contact. Now, except in a few states, it's not illegal for an original creditor to still call or contact you after we send a cease and desist letter. However, normally a credit card company would stop calling. They might still send you a bill since they're an original creditor, but they're not going to call you. So, but if you haven't given us that information yet, give it to us. And if we sent out the letter recently, it may take them a while to process it, and you don't need to call them. No, but if they happen to call you and you happen to answer it, you just you tell them you're represented by Helps, give them our name and number, and hang up the phone. You don't need to communicate with them. If you communicate with them, they try to get under your skin. Their whole job is to try to get you to pay the debt. So you don't need to communicate with them. Okay? Eric, Marion asked, if a debt collector takes my bills back to the original creditor, they can still sue me because I'm on Social Security, right? Yeah. Anyone who holds the debt can sue you if they choose to. You know, when we send a cease and desist letter out, we let a creditor or collector know that your income is protected. And, if they had any brains, they would realize that, and they realize that a lawsuit is a waste. But sometimes they just choose to sue anyway for whatever reason. Not always, but they do. But you're not going to need to worry about it if they do, because your income's protected. It can't be taken from you. And you're not going to need to go to court. When one of our clients gets sued, you get us a copy of the lawsuit. We send a letter to the creditor or collector who sued you, let him know that your income is protected. You're not going to go to court. We understand they're going to get a judgment. Remind them of the nature of your protected bank account. And we call you on the phone to let you know why you don't need to go to court and why you don't need to worry. But once again, if you have a question ever or a concern, you pick up the phone and you call us. That's our clients. You're our client forever. Okay. Now, if you're new to this channel and you don't know what I'm talking about, you can always call Helps and we can go over your situation with you. It takes a few minutes, and if you decide you want our help, you can enroll in Helps. We don't turn anyone away that needs our help. For those that enroll, the cost is minimal. But no, you don't need to worry. So if you have a question, please call. Okay. So this person contacted us. I don't know if this says, please help with this question. How does a senior navigate bill collectors if they can't repay on the loans they've accumulated? They worry about either being sued or having family members contacted so they can trace your whereabouts. It's very daunting. Is there a way that a senior can stop the creditors from hounding them or embarrassing them in front of their children? Well, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, passed in 1978, prohibits debt collectors from contacting third parties and informing a third party about a debt. They cannot call your family and say we're a debt collector. They can't do that. They legally could call someone one time to try to ask your address to find out where you're at, but they can't identify themselves as a debt collector. If they do that, they would violate the law. And for many reasons, if you owe a debt and you're on protected income, if you were sued, you don't need to worry. You don't have to go to court. Your income's protected. It's protected in your bank account, as I've explained, and we'll explain more. So you don't need to worry, okay? And if you aren't new, you can look at our videos here on YouTube Live. Look at our website, www.helps.here.org. HELPS stands for Help Eliminate Legal Problems for Seniors. Ishere.org. Helpsishere.org. Don't want you to worry. That's what we're here for. Stop worrying. This person contacts us from Ohio, and they say, will you please send me a packet? I have hearing disability and I am in debt and need help, but want to study the packet and see what you can do for me. I have charge cards and a student loan for about $22,000, and I'm so worried I'm worried. I'm 83 years old. Thank you so much. I can have someone call for me after I read the packet. Well, yeah, we do have a packet we can send to you, but frankly, you can learn more about HELPS on our website. And if you're able to, listening to our videos than about anything else. The packet's pretty limited, but we can send a packet to someone. And we'll be able to help this lady. She's 83. She has $22,000 in debt. Charge cards, they can't collect from her. She doesn't need to worry about the student loan. Right now, there's a stay on the student loans trying to take people's Social Security. They don't do that. Student loan would never take your pension. They never do that. The most a student loan could do, and they're not doing it now, is offset 15% of Social Security, but they've stopped doing that, and I don't know when they're going to begin it. And they may begin at some point, but they make it hopefully they're going to make it easier for seniors to get on an income-based repayment plan, which if your income's low enough, you won't have to pay anything. I understand any copies we need to send to HELPS. If we don't have a copy, or we can take a picture with our cell phone. Sure. We have a text number. You can text it to us. You can take a picture and email it to us. Whatever, easy. You can send it in the mail. You can fax it. You can email it, or you can text it. Now, if you're particularly have a lot of difficulties, if you can give it to us over the phone, but we prefer if you get it to us in writing. It makes it less likely that there's mistakes. Bill says, I saw on the internet this weekend that once a debt is owed to a third-party collector, the original contract is no longer valid. Is that true? Well, yeah, I think what you're talking about is a statute of limitations. Okay, so in most states, all states, if you incur a debt, a collector or creditor has a certain amount of time to sue you to have a court establish that you owe the debt. Okay? That might be 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, could be longer, but normally it's 6 years or less. And they have to file a lawsuit to establish that you owe the debt within that time period. And it goes from the time when the debt was incurred, normally from the time that the debt was incurred or when you last made a payment on the debt. So if it's a 6-year statute of limitation and you incurred the debt 5.5 years ago, but you make another payment on it today, then there's another 6 years from today. So it doesn't matter who holds the debt. Could be the original creditor or a debt collector. Once that statute of limitations passes, they can't sue you. Now, they could still call you on the phone and try to get you to pay. And if you did that, you'd revive the statute of limitations. But they legally can't sue you, and they can't threaten a lawsuit. We don't see too many debt collectors trying to collect after the statute of limitations to try to sue someone. But they do occasionally. A couple of weeks ago, I had talked to some good person, and a debt from us 18 years ago. Someone was trying to collect on it. And sometimes they'll call, and I've heard them tell our clients, well, we can't sue you, but we'd sure like to make arrangements for you to make this debt. They try to maybe lay a guilt trip, but you don't have to pay it. You don't need to worry. So it says, well, Ms. H asks, Eric, will a cease and desist letter stop a creditor from contacting you from a person giving out your phone number to a creditor that was their debt and not anything to do with you? Can you person be fined? Well, I mean, anything is possible, Mrs. H. So what you're saying is that someone else gave a creditor your phone number and said you were the one that owed the debt. Can that person be fined? Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a practical matter enough can be done. I don't see that as being a problem that happens a lot. Once in a while, people will call us and we'll talk to people and they'll say, they're trying to collect the debt from me, but it's not me. It's a different, maybe their name is Mary Smith. It's a different Mary Smith. It's not me. Or they may think it's them and they never incurred the debt. Well, you don't have to fight it. You don't have, if your income is Social Security or pension or disability, you can, if they contact you, you can tell them it's not me, but you don't have to go beyond that. Because, if they were to pursue the debt, they're not going to be able to collect from you anyway. I mean, you could spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of angst trying to prove to a debt collector that it isn't you. And a lot of times they're not going to care. They have a big list of people they call and they just want someone to pay the debt. But you don't need to worry about it. Okay? Jeannie asks, how long does it take to get an answer on a deferral? Are you talking about a deferral of a house payment, Jeannie? That's kind of up to the bank. It's, or the mortgage lender. There's no law that requires them to defer a mortgage. Just some of them still do that. I'm not aware of any time limit on that. Mary asked, if they get a judgment against me but are unable to collect, can they still sell the debt to a collection agency? Well, they've already established by the judge. That's the ultimate thing, is to get a judgment. That means there's a court says you owe the money. And if they do get a judgment, if someone does get a judgment, they could sell the judgment to someone else to try to collect on the judgment. Yes. Yeah. And do they do that? Yeah, occasionally. Some people will contact me They may have had a judgment against them from several years ago, and for some reason they need to get the judgment resolved, and the judgment and the attorney that got the judgment no longer has the judgment. It's gone back to another different collection agency, or it's gone back to the original creditor, but they're no longer involved. So, yeah, judgments can be bought or sold. Okay. So, okay, when sold to the third party debt collector, how long does it take to get an answer? Let me see here. It was a coworker that did that. They owe the debt and gave my phone number to the creditor instead of their own. Good coworker. Not a very nice coworker, was it, Ms. H? Um, I suppose if someone called me like that, I would tell them, hey, you've got the wrong number. That's not me. Yeah. So this person contacts us. They say, I am deeply in debt, about 40,000 between credit cards and 2 personal loans. I have other income besides Social Security. They get a little royalties check from mineral rights, they say, in West Virginia. I've been advised to move that income to a bank in Delaware where presumably it cannot be garnished. I would like to pay everyone off, but my income has dropped about 80% from 2022 until now. Well, your Social Security is protected. Okay. Now, what about a royalty check from mineral rights in West Virginia? Well, remember, before your money is at risk, someone would have to sue and get a judgment. That happens to happen first. Okay. And then they have to know where you bank. And that's not always easy. There's no place a collector can go to find out where you bank. There's no place they can automatically find out where you bank. But if they were to find out where you bank and they did file a writ of garnishment, twice the amount of federal benefits you get each month is protected automatically in that account from garnishment. So if you got $1,500 in Social Security, that means $3,000 is protected in your bank. If you got $1,000 in a mineral rights check and deposited into that account where your Social Security goes, then that money's going to be protected as long as the balance in the bank account is less than $3,000. So you probably really don't need a Delaware bank account. Now, there are a few states, Delaware is one of them, where it's more difficult to garnish a bank account. But as long as you keep the balance in your bank account wherever you're at in the United States, less than twice the amount of your federal benefit, it's protected automatically. Now, are they going to be able to garnish your mineral rights? Well, in 46 years of practice, I've talked to tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of bankruptcies. I've never seen mineral rights actually be garnished by a debt collector. Okay. Could it happen? Theoretically, it could. I just don't see it happening, so I wouldn't worry about that. Okay. So this person contacts us from New York. For about 2 months, I've been receiving calls from Asset Recovery Solutions. That's a collection agency. This may be due to a Credit One account that was recently charged off, but I'm not sure because I have not spoken to them. The Credit One account was charged off, although I was still making small monthly payments, but I was not able to make the full monthly minimum payment. I told them in a few weeks I would be able to pay the full overdue amount. They told me if I had paid a little more money, they would not charge off my account, but they charged it off anyway. Credit One did email me a notice of sale of my credit card accounts. They said it was sold to LVNV Funding, care of Resurgent Capital Services, not Asset Recovery Solutions. Well, you know, a debt collector or an original creditor, if they're going to transfer the collection to some other agency, they're not legally required to tell you that they've done that. So sometimes you can get a notice from a collection agency that you've never heard of before. Now, they are legally required to tell you who the original creditor is, what the debt is. But once again, this person from New York, they don't need to worry. If they're getting Social Security pension, their income protected. They don't have to pay asset recovery systems. They don't have to pay LNVV funding. LVNV funding. They don't have to pay any debt collector. Okay. What are the legal ramifications of attorneys or bar members reporting disposition of securities to taxing authorities? Don't know. This person contacts us from from Oregon, okay, and he says he's contacting us about his dad. We get a lot of calls from kids that help their parents. It's kind of nice. In fact, I've got a form email that I send sometimes. I haven't sent it for a while. It's called I call it Thank You for Watching Out for Mom. And it tells a child, thanks for watching out for your parent. We appreciate that, because there's a lot of parents out there that don't have kids that watch out for them. But this guy says, my dad is 82 years old and he's been sending money to a sweetheart scammer for at least 2 years. I didn't talk about this yesterday, I hope. The two separate bank accounts of his have been frozen because he was trying to remove amounts of $10,000 to send to a certain actress. Okay, I'm going to get, there we go. Just a minute here, sorry. Sometimes my computer does something and asks me to kind of sign in again. And that's what it did, and it delays things. I apologize for that. So, okay, so you got this 82-year-old guy who's being scammed. Sweetheart scam. Fraud departments from both banks informed me he was being scammed, and he seemed to have accepted his error, but recently has come to my attention that he is still sending money to this person. Now he's gotten himself in real debt by failing to pay his accrued rent at the retirement house he lives in. He's currently in arrears for $17,000, according to the apartment manager's advisory to me. He's being sent an eviction notice and he'll have to move out by this August. I'm not sure how to put a stop to this other than to legally wrestle control of his retirement income from him so debt can be repaid and the association with these scammers brought to a screeching halt. I'm seeking advice with this situation. Before I proceed, I would appreciate any help you give. Now, I'm not sure if we talk to him or not, but we will. One of our attorneys will call him back. And what we're going to tell him is that he needs to get a conservatorship. Okay. See, there's a thing that's called a guardianship. Now, if you've got a parent somehow that needs help with their, their where they live and stuff like that, that's called a guardianship. But to control someone's finances is a conservatorship. And there's two different. You can have both at the same time. Now, if he could get power of attorney from his dad, he could get control of the bank account then and if the dad would be willing to do that, he signs up giving his son power of attorney and it's notarized, then the son could go in and get the bank account changed, get it in his name, and get control of the dad's finances. Now, theoretically, the dad could revoke the power of attorney, but might have a difficulty time doing that. But that way the son could get a hold of things and stop this scammer from taking money. These romance scams are the worst scams of all. I don't know if anyone listening to me involved in that romance scam. I don't need to know it, but if you are, if you have a romance on the internet or something and the person asks for money, I could guarantee you that 99.9% of the time it's a scammer. But the problem is, I tell that to people that are being scammed and they don't want to believe it. I probably know more about scams than any other attorney in this nation because we have so many thousands of seniors that we help, and I hear about these scams. And romance scams, in my opinion, are the worst. For one reason, they can steal a person's entire life savings in a matter of a few strokes of the key. And if you're supposedly in love with someone and trusting, people can take advantage of you. But these scammers are professionals; they're very good at it. But if it was a child, that I would tell this person, you need to get a hold of your dad's account, and if you won't cooperate, you go to the court. You probably have to hire an attorney to help you do that. You want to get a power. You want to get a conservatorship, control over his funds, and then try to work it out with the apartment manager that you can pay them if he's got enough funds to do that. Hopefully they haven't cleaned him out completely. So this was a response. We did a video, one of our videos, I talked about this stuff, and a guy put this as a comment. I may have talked about how, your income's protected, they can't do anything to you, you're going to be okay. And this person says, but if you have equity in your home, they can come after that. So none of what you're saying seems to be matter. That would have been my retirement money, but they can come after that. Not to mention the income tax you owe. They can come after you for that too. Okay. So this is what I wrote back, and I'll expand on it. I said, this is not true. Judgment creditors do not come after homes, even if there is equity over a state's homestead exemption. Okay, they don't do that. So if you live in a state and you got a home that's worth 200,000 and it's free and clear, but the exemption is 50,000, you've got 150,000 equity in the home over and above the exemption. Does it mean if someone sues you and gets a judgment, they're going to come take your home? No. Could they do it? Yeah, theoretically possible, but they don't do it. And I know that. Tens of thousands of bankruptcies I've filed and helps for the last, 14 years, whatever. They don't do that. And so I also said, seniors with modest or lower incomes can often qualify for currently not collectible status with the IRS and pay nothing. Okay. So there's just a lot of misinformation out there. And I see it sometimes in the comments. You're right, Richard. They can break your heart and break your finances too. So this person contacts us from Missouri. I need help. I have lost everything I owed over the past 4 years. And then he describes the medical problems this person had. So far, because of surgery, I got behind on my SUV payment. I can't get caught up because I'm low income, disabled, senior. I don't get much money and I've lost everything already. I can't find anybody to help me to get my payments caught up, and I don't know what to do. And they go on to talk about what happened. Before they said, I dropped my full coverage to liability and then it goes and burns up and I have no coverage on it. And so I had to buy a new SUV with a cosigner in order to get something. Now, me and the cosigner, which is my sister, is having problems because I don't know what to do. And I talked about bankruptcy. Can you give me some information? Help me to find anything to do. I'm desperate right now. I'm 70 years old. I need help and I can't get it. Please let me know. Now, this is a kind of not an unusual problem. Okay. So this person had a car, it went bad, and they bought a new car. And they owe a lot of money on that new car. And they had someone co-sign with them, her sister, to be helping. And maybe, I don't know what the payment is on that new car. It could be something that this person simply can't afford. Okay. It apparently is, because they said they've gotten behind on their payments. What do they do now? I can't, I can't wave a magic wand and solve every problem. What helps does is when we represent seniors, what we tell them is if you have old debt, you can stop paying the old debt, like credit cards, and you can use that money for your needs, like your food and your medicine, and maybe to make a car payment. Okay. But if you're behind on a car and you simply can't afford the car payment, I can't wave a magic wand and say how you can keep that car. Maybe the car simply needs to go back. Okay. Now there are transportation alternatives. There's Uber, there's Lyft. A lot of cities have public transportation. If a person has a $500 or $700 car payment, man, that's a lot of Uber rides. It's not like a lot of seniors simply can't afford an expensive car. Okay. But we talked to this person, talked to them about their options. Yin yang, what about real estate owned, but it's not occupied? Well, if you have a home, we're talking about where you live in, a home on dirt, that that is covered under your state's homestead exemption. But let's say you owned another piece of property that wasn't occupied and there was a judgment. Can someone take that other piece of property? Well, first off, the judgment normally would have to be in the same county where the property is located. But even then, if it's not a home you occupy, it's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to try to foreclose on people's homes or real property. They pretty much or get a car that might be over the exemption for the state. Pretty much limited to trying to attempt to try to garnish a bank account, which is protected for other reasons. Now, why don't they go after a home or a car if it's over the exemption? Well, it's a pretty complicated process, and it's expensive. They'd have to hire an attorney, and maybe someone else's name on the title. They've just learned that there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense for them to do it. Now, I think that what they hope is if they got a judgment, it could be a lien on the home, and eventually they might get paid when the home gets sold. But once again, it's not the practice to go after other assets. Now, legally they could, and that someone might scare you, or you might get scared into thinking that's possible. I'm just telling you what happens in the real world. Okay. So this person writes in and says, I like your advice to seniors. It makes so much sense for lower income folks. What can be done about the scamming high interest payday loans? If you don't pay them, they try to take you to court and even get a judgment because they really have no collateral. What would you advise a person who owes several of them? Well, first thing I'd say is they probably are not going to sue you. I mean, they could. There's all kinds of payday loans. You can get a payday loan overseas. You can get one on the Indian reservation, over the internet, and they charge really high interest rates. Now, why do you get a payday loans overseas or on the internet or on a Indian reservation? Well, because federal law doesn't apply to them, and they can make threats that violate the law, and they can't be sued. How are you going to sue some company that's in Russia or in some off seas in a foreign country that's based out of there? And the same thing if a student loan is based on an Indian reservation, they can get away with more things because a lot of the federal laws don't apply to Indian reservations. Okay, but even a student loan isn't going to sue you. Now, if we have a client that enrolls in helps and they have a student loan, we're going to send them a cease and desist letter. A lot of times, the student loan, I'm talking about a payday loan. A lot of times, they may still try to contact our client, and because they know that they can't get sued or they're not worried about it. And we just tell our clients, forget about it, don't worry about it. Once again, if they were to sue you and get a judgment, if your income, Social Security, or pension is protected, they can't do anything. Okay? Okay, this person says, they say, Google says IRS can take up to 15% of your Social Security check every month until standing taxes are paid. Well, that's one of the problems with artificial intelligence. Yeah, they'll tell you one thing, but a lot of times not the whole story. Okay. Yeah, it is possible for the IRS to offset 15% of your Social Security. And it does happen, but it won't happen unless they first sent you a letter telling you they intend to do that after 60 days. And that gives you a chance, if you're modest or lower income senior, to contact the IRS and get on currently not collectible status. If you're a married couple, you have income of about $3,500, even a little bit more or less, you can qualify for currently not collectible status and not have to pay the IRS anything. And if you have income of about $2,500 left and you're single, and the lower income you are, the easier it is to get on currently not collectible status. So when Google says that they can take 15% of your Social Security, that's like saying, well, if you walk outside and there's clouds in the sky, you could get hit by a bolt of lightning. Sure, it might be possible. If you hear thunder outside, you could get hit, but you don't live your life that way. Is it going to happen? No. I mean, I guess it's theoretically possible, but it's so unlikely that we don't even talk about it. So no, you're going to be fine. And if you owe IRS, you can get on currently not collectible status and not have to worry about it. Okay. So this person contacted us from Texas. They say, I'm being sued for credit card debt that I can no longer afford to pay. And it says they were involved with the debt settlement program and realized that it was not helping their financial situation overall. Yeah, if you're involved with debt settlement or debt management, first question I'm going to ask you is, did they tell you when you enrolled with them that your income was protected? Like if you got Social Security, if they didn't tell you that, you're being scammed. They're being fraudulent. They're not giving you the complete story. If they would have told your income was protected, you'd realize you don't need their help. Anyway, they go on to say, person canceled with them. This is notes from one of our paralegals. He was served yesterday with a lawsuit and then found out information about helps. They didn't talk any more about him because he just wanted to call us to see if we're there, and then he wanted to check us out some more. He said he feels much better about helps and that we're not a scam. It's kind of sad. You got to check everyone out and see if they're scams. Anyway, it says he said he'll be calling back with his wife. And he did call back, and we read him what we did. And then it looks like he enrolled on the 11th. That would have been Friday. The wife wasn't going to be part of our program because the debts are currently only in his name. He got sued by Discover. He's going to send us those lawsuit. Last thing it says, he said that he was really thankful to have found helps. We hear that a lot. I know that. I know that. So if you're struggling and you have questions, you can always call us. We have paralegals available to call 855-435-7787. We're here. Okay. Okay. This person contacts us from Oregon. I need help with credit card debt. I'm 79 years old, disabled, have diabetes, heart problems, and something else. I need help. Well, that's what helps is here for. Help stand for help eliminate legal problems for seniors. And how do we do that? You call us on the phone, we'll interview you, we'll talk to you about your situation. If you decide you want our help, we can click a button while you're on the phone and roll you on the spot. Then you're going to give us the collectors you owe money to or the creditors, their name, address, and account number. We're going to send them a cease and desist letter. They're going to leave you alone. And if you ever have a question or concern, you can call us no matter how often. We don't want you to worry. This person writes in, they said, do you have an income limit for helps services? The answer is no. With certain types of charities and businesses, they might have certain requirements. But we've chosen not to do that. We don't represent seniors that are rich. They don't need our help. We represent seniors that are modest or lower income, but we don't have a cutoff. An income for someone that lives in maybe Southern California, where it's really expensive, could be completely different from a person in another part of the country where it's a lot cheaper to live. So no, we don't have an income limit. Your income just needs to be Social Security, pension, disability, VA benefits, and it can be work too. In certain amount of your income is protected by federal law. So call us if you have a question. Don't need to worry. We'll be glad to talk to you. So this person contacts us. They say, are there any exceptions to being judgment proof? They've heard me talk about your judgment proof. If you only have Social Security and a small IRA, well, if your only income is Social Security and a small IRA, it's judgment proof. No one can take it. Now, the only creditor that could possibly take it is maybe taxes, and I'll explain how that could be stopped. And about the only other exception would be if you had past due child support. But no, if your only income is Social Security and IRA, it's protected. Another common question: at what age do you become senior if you're disabled? It doesn't matter how old you are to get our help. Even though HELP stands for Help Eliminate Legal Problems for Seniors and Disabled Persons. We have clients that are in their 20s that are disabled that are part of HELPS. Okay? But the vast majority of our clients are seniors. So this person made a comment on one of our videos. And he says, that's not true. A percentage of owed income taxes and student loans are automatically deducted from Social Security each month without fail, and continuing to the debt is paid or you die. It may also be useful to note that interest continues to accrue on that debt while the money is being deducted from your benefit account. Now, I'm not saying that. This is a comment from someone who's saying. They say, and they're wrong. But anyway, so additionally, any benefit service eligibility for you will be judged on the amount of your Social Security award, not on the amount you actually receive. And they go on, they say, example, Social Security benefit is $1,000. 20% goes to tax or student loan debt. You receive $800. If you apply for food stamps, you would not be eligible. And he explains why. Uh, Regarding student loans, he says, nobody tells you about this when you apply. In fact, they tell you exactly the opposite. I first heard of it on 60 Minutes when they discovered this happening to disabled coal mine workers. I then did a research project with shelter residents, learned they had paid and were owing throughout their lives. 10% of $1,000 goes on and on. So that was this person's comment on one of my videos. And I sent him back. This is what I said. I don't want to be rude, but I got to call people out, and I'm not rude. I said your statements are incorrect. And I said it's not automatic, and it's frankly not common. Even so, talking about the IRS taking money from someone. Even so, modest and lower income seniors, primarily the persons helps assist, can qualify for currently not collectible status with the IRS and income-based payments for student loans. And right now, student loans, they're not even trying to take money from Social Security and pay nothing. Listen to the entire video and discussed in many other videos with Helps in Senior Living. And in regards to interest accruing on debt, it doesn't matter as long as your income is protected. So what? I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, if it's a matter of paying the debt or groceries or food or medicine, you're going to pay for groceries and food and medicine and rent and heat. You don't need to worry about the debt, okay? And I said, then I concluded this. I said, you are confused and incorrect on your other conclusions as well, which he was. What were they? This person contacts us and they say, I'm with Guardian litigation for the past 3 months and I'm paying them a fee of $605 for the past 3 months for credit cards. They have not really come up with an agreement with them. What can I do? Please let me know how I can get this done. Please send me an email. And this is what I wrote them back. Or this, I don't know if it was a comment, but this is what I said. I said, there are a lot of debt settlement companies or debt management companies. See, debt management companies are nonprofits. Debt settlement companies are for-profit. Debt settlement companies are normally law firms. Debt management companies are nonprofits. Okay, debt settlement companies, what they do is you pay them money and they collect the money and then they try to settle with the creditors. Debt management companies, they take your debt and try to pay it over a period of 3 to 4 years at a lower interest rate. Okay. And what I said, if you were a senior receiving Social Security and or a pension and weren't told that your income was safe and protected and you didn't need to pay the debt, you were being scammed by this company. With few exceptions, they don't tell seniors about their protected income. Instead, they sign them up, often putting seniors into utter poverty, making payments for debts they don't have to pay. Okay, This person from Missouri, they say, I spoke with a person this morning about a letter from the IRS, a notice of intent to seize my assets and a right to hearing. I'm 75, retired, living at someplace in Missouri. The person I talked to with is going to send information about IRS uncollectible debt procedures to follow. Thank you for your help. Looking forward to receiving the information. Yeah. Now, what happens if you owe money to the state? Well, state tax collector is just like a credit card company. They can't garnish your Social Security, your pension, your money's protected in your bank account. So the state really can't do anything. So this person contacts us from Georgia. A couple. They're 64. They're in their mid 60s. Husband's getting around 3,000. The wife is still working. They're considering bankruptcy. They have over $100,000 in credit card and loan debt. But the wife is going to be leaving her job in September, and she will only be receiving Social Security and a couple pensions. We explained to them, this is notes from our paralegal, we explained to them what we do, about how their income was protected. So I'll read. Okay, I'm not talking about any of you guys, but one of the paralegals, they say, apparently they were on the, she says, he loves to interrupt his wife and talk over her, even to answer questions directed at her. Also likes to talk over and interrupt you while you're speaking. Okay. I'm guilty of that. So don't be offended. My wife's always telling me I got to stop interrupting. Okay. But anyway, they were happy with what we have to say because it says here, ready to enroll. Michelle knows that she has to wait until she's approved for Social Security to enroll, but she could stop paying her debt. You know, if you stop paying your debt and you're going to quit in September, what is this, July, August, September, that's only 2 months away. We could even enroll her. I mean, no creditor is going to sue you and be able to garnish your wages between now and then. It's a practical matter. You normally would have to be behind at least 6 months before a creditor would even think about suing you. So they're going to be fine. So I noticed some of you guys are talking about service summons. I always tell people when I was doing bankruptcy, they were worried about being served, or they were worried about it being in the newspaper. Well, there's no newspapers nowadays, so it's not in the newspaper anymore. Although I did talk to someone a few weeks ago in some little town in Kentucky where there was a newspaper, and they were worried about being in the newspaper. But anyway, you know, if you haven't been sued, it's just your time is coming. There's very few people that get out of this life in the United States of America that aren't sued at least once or twice during their lifetime. So nothing to be worried about. And with a helps client, or if your income's protected, you don't need to worry about it. Okay. So this person contacts us from Nevada. Only income is Social Security and a modest pension. They just signed up with a debt management company. They're house sitting for someone who's out of the country. And then they called again. He's going to cancel with the debt management program. And then they called back a couple of days later. Successfully exited the debt management company. We tell people, if you're with a debt management company, you call them up on the phone, ask them to return any money they're holding for you. Can ask them, why didn't you tell me my income was protected when I enrolled? Ask them that. And this couple enrolled, they're going to be fine. This person contacts us from California. They're on disability, have minimal Social Security disability, and they drive $500. They get $500 a month driving for Uber Eats. They rent, they own the car outright, have credit card debt, another loan for a vehicle that was surrendered. We read paragraphs to them, enrolled them in helps, and they were very thankful to find us. So that's the story of helps. People are glad when they find us. So what does that mean? That means that, if you press the like button, that helps more people to find out about us because they'll listen to these YouTube videos. If you have a question, you can put them in the comment and we'll answer it later. Share what helps does with others. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. So it looks like we've come to an end of the hour. There weren't too many questions today, but I don't mind. I have these questions that I can post. And I know a lot of people listen to these videos because I can see the numbers. A lot of them listen to them later, then a lot of them not live. They just like to listen to them. And a lot of people tell me that even though they know what I'm going to say, they just like to hear it again. So I'm glad to say it again. So you're right. Have a good rest of your day, everyone, and I'll be here to talk to you tomorrow. Be sure and call us if you have any questions. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. Things have a way of working out. Boy, I know that. I really do. God bless. Have a wonderful day.